There's what we say, and then there's what we don't. And often it's the unspoken that holds the most power. Welcome to the Unspoken Edge, a space where hidden dynamics, quiet tensions, and unacknowledged truths are named, held, and turned into grounded action. I'm Rachel Keck, coach, facilitator, and founder of Mosaic Collaborative. I work with visionary leaders who want growth that's sustainable, relational, and real. Here, we explore what's beneath the surface, the energy under leadership, the patterns, resistance, and the truth shaping how we lead and live. In every episode, we'll name what's missing, hold what's tense, and follow the thread to what's real. Because clarity creates traction. And legacy, it's not just what you leave behind, it's how you lead today. Let's begin. Hello, everyone. Today on the Unspoken Edge, we have Shana Jones. Shana Jones and I met recently, very recent friend. And our first conversation is one of those that you're like, wait, we could actually spend 6 hours like deep diving into, I don't know where Shauna's from. I don't know what her favorite color or birthday is, but we know each other's souls, I feel like. We're asking similar questions and we are going in similar places with philosophy around workplace culture and leadership. And so I am so excited for this conversation today because I know it will be a good one. But Shauna, I'll hand it to you. What do you want everybody to know about you and what you do?
Oh, wow. Thanks, Rachel. And I feel the same way. What an incredible first meeting we had. One of those conversations where you're just so enthusiastic, you're topping each other and just accelerating the energy. I was sad for it to be over and happy to have this opportunity to pick it up where we left off. I'm Shana Jones, and I am the Chief Optimist for H Artists. H Artists is a fairly new since the middle of 2024. We are really focused on blending the world of HR, which, as we all know, can be very compliancy and, very rule-y, following the rules, and artistry. Our question to you is, how do we make the people, the business of people, an art? There's so many practitioners, HR practitioners out there in the world who are really working on so many different parts of HR, whether it is that more compliance rule side of things, or maybe they've taken on leadership development for the entire organization, or they've been doing, initiatives that they've been having to roll out over time. And those same professionals need to be lifted up. They need to be at the table where decisions are made, and they need to be enjoying what they do. And that's the artistry of it all. People is art.
What's your big problem that you're solving with H artists?
Yeah, I think the big problem that we're solving really is about reigniting the passion for people in that seat. Now, again, it's just so easy to get pulled into just the rules of it all and being the principal's office and the disciplinarian and the policy holders. And so the big problem we're solving is we're working to make inroads for those HR professionals who need to be at the big table where a lot of people decisions are being made without bringing that discipline into it, the people discipline into it. And then we want to empower those people professionals even further to reignite their passion for the people that they're serving.
Yeah. Burnout is real,
For real. So for real.
you
So
know?
for real.
And I love
Yeah.
that. I love that angle of Chief Optimist as a title because it is about perspective and shifting and in people-oriented positions like HR. There's a lot of things you do that take a lot of energy.
Yeah. And it has to do with, as you say, burnout being real, well, that stuff usually winds up on HR's doorstep, right? So
Mhm.
not even just the HR professionals being burnt out, but the people that they're there to support. That's typically their first stop is HR to find out what options are available to them, whether it be, an employee assistance program or maybe a changed schedule that would allow them to have a fuller life or a better balanced life. That's typically where those concerns come first in an organization. So who's taking care of the people who are taking care of the people?
Yeah, nurturing the nurturers. That was my
Yes.
slogan for a while. There was he would
Yeah.
love to nurture the nurturers.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, the question that I have for you today, Shauna, is what is something unspoken that's been quietly shaping how you lead, decide, or connect with others lately? Something that once you acknowledged it revealed a deeper part of legacy in the making.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I sort of have two answers. I have to pick one. Yeah. So this is going to sound more crass than I mean it to, but nobody knows what they're doing. No, nobody has the manual. The manual does not exist. In a world that is peopled, full of people, the unspoken thing is nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just figuring it out together, right?
I
We're
could
all just
feel
figuring it out
I
together.
took a big, deep breath when you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are. We're all just trying to figure it out. And sure, back to the idea of HR being very compliance driven and rules driven. And we have policies and we have rules and we have laws. And there are things that are guidelines and guardrails for us within which to operate. However, every single day we're showing up with whatever's in our cup. And so is everyone else. And if the cup is full, then maybe things are okay. If the cup is empty or not quite as full as it could be, before we can even handle the rules and the laws and the compliance and the guidelines, we have to acknowledge the person that's sitting in front of us. And they don't have all the rules. I don't have all the rules. We just have to figure it out together.
Gosh. Before I take over the conversation, I want to know how is this showing up for you? How is it having you show up?
Yeah, I appreciate the follow-up. I've done HR consulting for many years now. And as a consultant, you walk into the room with your clients as the supposed expert, right? You've got all the answers. That's why we're paying you money, is you walk in the room and you tell us what to do. The What's often not acknowledged, unless of course you bring it with you as the consultant, is this very thing that we're in this together. And I may be bringing in experience. I may be bringing in case studies from other organizations that have been in a similar predicament. But until you and I sit down and really talk through the people that are a part of whatever transition or challenge that you are currently being faced with, we're not really going to get where you want to go. So how it's showing up for me is that, consulting gig after consulting gig after consulting gig, I work very hard to make that known at the beginning. And even as I'm courting a client, I speak to the fact that it is a people first situation. It is an acknowledgement that we are all coming at this from our own experience and with our own expectations, and we have to start from there. So let's agree on a starting point that
Mm.
has people at the forefront. And it shows up for me every day in my work, every day.
You know what that's making me think of, Shauna, is how it's more about navigation skills
Yeah,
than about necessarily like I guess I'm thinking weighing navigation skills with visioning skills, like visioning, clarifying outcomes, setting KPIs, all that's important. But the ability to navigate well.
sure. Yeah. Yeah,
And
and to
that
be open enough. Yeah, to
yeah.
open enough to see it, and again, when you said that, the first thing I went back to was this incredible client experience I had. It was for a family business, and it was clear that members of the family, something was wrong. Something very big was wrong that was not what I was hired to handle, right? So I was hired to come in the room to help with a business solution, and it was clear that person A and person B did not agree. There was no way for that to be successful. There was no way for that to be successful if the two of them weren't acknowledging the very thing that was keeping them from moving forward.
Yeah. What do you think, in your experience, what is the barrier to that acknowledgement? What's the barrier to that openness and acknowledgement of what is?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, boy, that's a big, deep question. It comes down to honesty, authenticity, vulnerability. Huge vulnerability is huge. Our colleague Brene Brown is out there fighting the good fight and preaching about shame and vulnerability and helping people in the world of business to see how not being vulnerable and acknowledging with your authentic self gets in your way every day. So when I think about the example I just gave you, that's absolutely what it was. I mean, there was a lifetime of trauma being represented in this conference room, right? You want to talk
Family
about performance
business,
management, right?
although it doesn't matter if it's family business, all of our
It's
trauma
true.
still comes into the
Yeah,
room.
exactly. Exactly. So until people can realize that that really has to be the first thing. It's got to be people first. They'll never agree on, whatever performance management system I wanted to recommend, right? There was way more going on here than that.
Which, the ability to just embody that we're all just trying to figure it out. That nobody, because we are very much, I feel like, hardwired for certainty. I mean, we make so many assumptions that we can convince ourselves there's some certainty and that there's a rule book that has all the answers and I have, dibs on it or whatever.
Right.
And so the work to really embody that we're all figuring it out takes, I mean, let go of certainty is a work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not there. I have huge amounts of fear around not being certain or feeling entirely safe, right? I mean,
Mm-mm.
I don't think I really know anybody who's not working on that on some level, right? And bringing that into the world of work is challenging, very
Yes.
challenging. Yeah.
There is this sense that we are supposed to leave parts of ourselves outside of work. And one of those things is uncertainty and the unknown. There should be no unknowns in business, like, right? It's business. It's not life. We should know what we're doing and it should be all clear and we should know exactly what the outcomes are shoulds that keep us from leaning into we're navigators.
What's really funny is I hear you saying that is I think who's on top of that game? Who's got that figured out? And you know who I see who is doing better at it than people in my generation
Who?
are the Gen Zers. The
Interesting.
Gen Zers. When you talk about certainty, right? My generation and the generations before, and then maybe to a degree millennials as well. I believe our perception of a job, right, of your job, there's a little bit of loyalty there. There's a little bit of in both directions. Like the certainty feels like, well, I show up and I do my job, and so I know when I show up tomorrow, I'll have the job, right? And that's why I show up is so that tomorrow I'll have a job, right? I don't see that as much with our Gen Z friends, and I really do kind of dislike categorizing everybody by generation, but there are some similar traits that can be pulled out. The Gen Zers don't seem to put that certainty place on their job, I've noticed.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, that it's like if they need certainty in their life, they have found it in other places. They'll be the first ones to say, it's just a job, or I'll find another job, or they don't own me and I don't owe them anything. And I hear that on social media. I hear it with my clients and with the workforce that is represented by Gen Z. It's interesting that their certainty has moved to a different place, it would seem. Their need for certainty has moved.
Yes, that makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense to me, actually.
Yeah.
Because you think
Yeah.
about, I mean, that makes me think of identity, right?
Mm,
And how, I mean, as a Gen Xer, there's still a sense that your work is who you are. What you do is who you are,
yes.
right? And when I look at my kids, the younger they get, the less they're really thinking, the less they're thinking in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a means to an end almost, right? It's like I'm here, I'm just trying to get to there.
Right.
Uh, and this is working for me right now. Yeah, it's a very different approach.
Which makes it so much easier to lean into, "We're all figuring this out. Let's
Yeah.
get together and figure this out." Because if my identity is this is what I do, then for crying out loud, I better know what I'm doing.
Yes, yes, yes. You put that together beautifully. Yes, yes, entirely, entirely. And when I work with younger people, they look to me as that expert, right? And they'll come to me for that expertise. And I can see it in their faces sometimes, almost like a wonderment,
Mhm.
like a, like a, you know, all I've done was, cite a California law for, labor or something. And they'll just look at me like I'm the oracle on the mountaintop. It's the strangest thing. And I share with them in that moment. I'm just like, no, I looked it up just like you can. I just looked it up. I have to remind them because there's also this view that while they're out there just figuring it out, that those who came before are somehow different.
Have it figured out.
Have it figured out, exactly, which I suppose is not unusual for any young generation, right? I thought my parents had it figured out too until I realized they didn't.
Well, and that circles right back to certainty. We want to find certainty, even if it's in the experience of those around us or in what we do. Like,
Mhm.
can I find some sense of security in these places? And I think that's even, coming back to like how do we embody we're all figuring it out. Sometimes it's I can show up that I'm figuring it out, but if you're figuring it out, I have a problem with that. My
Yes,
expectation
yes.
is that you have it figured out.
Right, right. Oh, absolutely. Oh, I totally relate. I totally relate. Yeah, seeing that disconnect.
And all of this too, Shauna, is making me come back to nervous systems. I'm just on a rampage about nervous systems, and I'm hearing it a lot lately, which I'm so grateful to be hearing more about this in the ethos. It's just a lot of this is learning how to regulate our own selves, to regulate our own nervous systems. Again, we're not going to be well regulated all the time. That's not how life works.
Systems as a whole have been very tried and coming in recent years, right? I mean, we've been through a lot as a nation, as a society, whether it's represented through pop culture or even the world of work. There's just a lot out there too that's coming at us a lot, right? So it just feels like, the news cycle is 5 seconds long now. Everything is happening all at once, all of the time. So in addition to just being biological creatures who aren't built for stress at this, long level, right? There was this wonderful book. I can't remember the name of the neuroscientist who wrote it. Maybe, back in the thousands, I think it came out, called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers. Have you heard of that book?
I've heard of the book, but I can't remember who.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty dense read. I can't say I made it all the way through it, but I've excerpted my way through it. And the fundamental basis for it is, our systems are engineered, our adrenal, injection for when a lion jumps out after the zebra is meant to go for short spurts, get away from lion, right? That's the whole thing, and that's how our biology is created, those stress hormones to exert when needed. But now, as in the human experience, that expression is happening constantly. Like we are constantly in a stress response. Our bodies aren't made for that, right? And so as it goes on and as the world is developing and we're again getting the consistent onslaught of news and information, just constant data input. It's breaking people. It's breaking people and really moving things out of balance. So it's a very hard place to be. And then if you are also trying to circling back, live within this idea of, well, I know what I'm doing. I've got all my stuff together. Nobody knows what they're doing. And you're in this just soup of input trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
So it's not just well, I guess your, your, what is it? Nature, nurture. It's not just what's in you. It's also your environment.
That's so true. So tell me more about navigation with with professionals, with teams, when it's like, okay, we're coming to this table. We're all we're all coming with our own cup in different, filled with different things, filled to different levels. And our goal here is to figure this out together. And so you had mentioned like one of the first things for you is agreeing on a start point. I'm curious, some of your like what are your thoughts, philosophies? Like how do you go about that? First setting the container where we're all coming together to figure this out, to co-create something. And then how do you get to that place where we can agree that this is where we're starting?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that is beginning with the end in mind, of course. Recognizing that if I'm in the room, there's been a contract that's been signed, and the contract expresses a particular outcome that is being sought, right? So I begin there, and then it's on me really to understand from the beginning with the individuals that I have spoken with, kind of where they're at, right? And by that I mean, am I walking into a room of experienced leaders who've been around the block a few times? Maybe they've done something similar or have some experience that they can rely on to bring into the room? Am I walking into the room with more of an emergent leadership team that have not really had a lot of times around the block? Or more often than not, is it a mix? I really welcome a mix of emergent and experienced leaders, mainly because there is so much learning that can happen in that space. So, having set that sort of context for you, I usually begin with something similar to that to say, as you look around the room at the people who are in here, before we can move forward to get to this outcome that I've been hired to help you to find, my job now is to make sure that you're all aligned. My job now is to make sure that you think that the people in this room can get to that place. And so we'll start with talking about trust, which is, feels a little woo woo to some people, I'm not going to lie. But I attempt to, through just sort of my preparation, to understand some of the personalities in the room. I'm a huge proponent of DISC. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Most folks are, yes. And I've gotten to a point where I can pretty quickly and pretty easily say, oh, yeah, that person's an I and that person's an S, or right. So if I can kind of understand how they like to express outwardly, it helps me to tailor my language to help them understand that the people in this room are really what's going to make or break the outcomes for this initiative or whatever it is we're working on. So we start with trust. We start with, where have you been as a team? Have you worked together? Has every situation been a good one? Is there some bad blood? Are there some stories I need to hear? And that typically gets us off on the right foot. That typically
Love
gets us
that.
started.
You know what
Yeah.
is, and this goes back to your very first thing about we're all so weird. Nobody really knows what's going on. Nobody, we're all figuring this out. Is that taking that time to ask some of those courageous, like more intimate and personal questions at the get-go? One slows everybody down, right?
Yeah.
Slows everybody down, gets some connection. And there's so much wisdom in that. And I think we forget sometimes because we are, especially again, one of the things we come to work with is like we need to be headed toward results and it should be results focused and I don't discount that like yeah, I mean that's what work is, to get some things done and to make some
Right.
impact. But when we jump right into outcomes, yeah, that I had a leader once say, that it's so important to slow down to go fast. And that is so true all the time. Uh, like, so just take the time initially to ask some of the harder questions, to just allow things to be put on the table. Maybe nothing's put on the table. Maybe we're ready to go. Maybe we don't need all the space um, to slow down, but just any sort of pause at the beginning to check in, to know, like, are we on the same page? Is there any air that needs to be cleared before we look at this outcome and how we go? And then you mentioned, this having shared language around people and
Mhm.
how different people process and express, and just really honoring those differences and adapting and being flexible to those. But again, if we show up and we feel like we have all the answers and we're only outcome focused, we miss that.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And Rachel, I see my role whenever I come into an organization as not being this finite experience, right? Like, yes, I've got a contract that has an outcome, but boy, my hope is that through working together, you're going to develop other skills and maybe learn some tips and tricks, some different ways to come at some of the challenges that are going to come up again after I'm long gone. And I do want to say too, something that came up as you were just expressing that was, if anybody's listening and they think to themselves, oh yeah, like that's going to work. I'm going to go sit in a room. I mean, I already know who would be in the room. I already know they would look at this person and go like, yeah, whatever. I don't have any bad blood. Let's move forward. Right. Like they just want to get to the outcomes. Well, I've got a special little trick for you here on this one. If you do encounter that, if you do encounter where any attempt to establish trust or to discuss the hard things is just glossed over or attempted to be glossed over in favor of getting right to outcomes, there's an exercise called the Merlin exercise. Are you familiar with that one?
No.
You heard of that one?
Tell us.
So Merlin, right, the famous sorcerer, well known to be able to tell the future. But in fact, if you look at the lore, it's not that Merlin could tell the future. It's that Merlin was living backwards. So when he would tell you the future, he was actually remembering. So the trick is you do a Merlin exercise for your outcome. And you say, all right, everyone around this table, here's what we said we want this to have happen. And now we'd like to go around the room and everyone tell me the story of how we got there. So put yourself in the future. The outcome has been achieved. Tell us about that journey. What was that like? And include everybody in the room as you do so. So the way that looks is like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that we got here. We finally got this initiative over the goal line. And John was so instrumental in making sure that marketing was aligned with our with our best objectives. And then, Susie, she did this incredible work on the back end with those Excel spreadsheets that nobody else could do. And then she created this one spreadsheet that gave us insight over here. And they tell the whole story and include the whole crew. And it starts this conversation that is more about the people in the room than it is about the outcome. So handy little tip if you ever need it.
Oh my gosh, I love that exercise. And it does help, especially if you talk about disc in whatever way, the high D, the very
Yes.
driven people,
Right.
at least we're talking about the outcome. Like there's some nervous
Right.
system
Exactly.
resolved because we are talking
Exactly.
about the outcome. But what I
That's right.
also love about that exercise is that when you open up people's brains to imagination, there's so much more buy-in and opportunity when you're able to imagine.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it starts that whole ball rolling. And so now when you conclude the exercise and leave them maybe with a little bit of homework to flesh out some of the milestones they'd like to see along the way or something like that, that's a little more, you know, point task driven, they bring more imagination to the task. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely
Love
right.
that. Okay, Shauna, anything for this conversation that you feel like we've missed or that you want to add?
You know, we're all figuring it out. There's another philosopher named Hanlon's razor. Are you familiar with it?
I've heard of
It's
Hanlon's razor, but I don't remember.
I might not say it exactly right, but it's basically never attribute to malice that which can be attributed to ignorance or just not knowing. So in addition to us all just kind of figuring it out here, assume good intent, right? I mean, we're all, for the most part, we're all trying to do our best out here.
Generous stories, generous stories.
Yeah, yeah, for ourselves as well, right? Give yourself a break.
That's
We're
right.
all just trying to figure it out.
That is
Yeah,
right. I love this conversation. How can people find you? If they want to have a conversation, if they have
yeah,
things that they need help with, how do they find Shauna Jones?
absolutely. Well, of course, I'm on LinkedIn. Everyone's on LinkedIn. You can find me in Shana Jones at LinkedIn. You can also find us at hartists.com, which is HRTISTS.com, HArtists. And we've got some great material coming up for the site, and that's all launching very soon in time for, I'm sure, when this podcast makes it to air, it should be live and available for anyone to find some good resources there, as well as to reach out and connect.
Thank you so much for having this conversation today.
My pleasure, Rachel. Absolutely. I've enjoyed it very much.
Our guests bring such clarity and depth. If you want to explore more of their work, you'll find links in the show notes. And thank you, listener, for joining me on the Unspoken Edge, the place where we name what's missing so you can lead from what matters. If something resonated with you today, share this episode with a friend or a colleague. Leave a review or subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you're navigating unseen tensions in your leadership or culture, let's connect. You'll find me at mosaiccollaborative.com, because legacy isn't a final chapter. It's what you live into, one conversation at a time.